Robert of Celt, having been captured in battle, was treated with great cruelty by King Henry, who confined him to a dungeon with only bread and water until he died. Right, okay, well, welcome to Power, Betrayal and Blood, Henry II in the Eyes of Geoffrey of Vigeois. Grab yourself a cup of tea, glass of wine or whatever, and settle in for a reading from this ancient chronicle. Welcome to Power, Betrayal and Blood, Henry II in the Eyes of Geoffrey of Vigeois, a journey into the heart of 12th century power politics, as recorded by one of the era's lesser known but strikingly vivid chroniclers. In this video I'll be reading selections from the Chronicles of Geoffrey of Vigeois, a monk from the Limousin region of France, who lived through the turbulent reign of King Henry II of England. While Geoffrey wasn't writing for the English court, his vantage point across the Channel offers us a rare continental lens through which to view one of the most powerful and controversial rulers of the Angevin Empire. Now, this isn't the polished history you might find in a modern documentary. Geoffrey's chronicle is raw, immediate, and steeped in the moral and religious outlook of his time. He wasn't just interested in the facts. He wanted to make sense of the chaos, the ambition, and the bloodshed that marked Henry's reign. And make no mistake, there was plenty of blood. Geoffrey writes of the rise of Henry, his complex entanglements with the church, the bitter familial betrayals that tore through the Angevin dynasty, and of course, the murder of Thomas Becket, an act that sent shockwaves across Christendom. What makes Geoffrey's account so compelling is how it blends the chronicler's duty to record with a monk's instinct to judge. His words are not neutral. They're weighted with disapproval, with awe, and with a deep tension between worldly power and spiritual authority. To him, Henry was a man both brilliant and damned. In the readings that follow, we'll hear Geoffrey's own words translated into modern English, but still echoing with the intensity of the original Latin. Listen closely and you'll hear not just history, but the very mindset of the 12th century, a world where kings walked with crowns and swords, but answered ultimately to God. So, sit back, relax, and let's step into the world, into a time of power, betrayal, and blood. Henry II in the Chronicle of Geoffrey of Vigeois. Henry, the son of Geoffrey of Angers, waged a long war against Stephen, brother of Theobald of Blois and regent of England. During his lifetime, King Stephen ceded the Duchy of Normandy to Henry and promised to leave him the kingdom upon his death. Henry the Elder adopted the same Henry, his grandson, through his daughter as his heir. This was seen as the fulfilment of the prophecy of Ambrose Merlin concerning Henry the Magnificent, whom he called the Lion of Justice, saying, "Piety shall undo the impious one who ruled, until he is clothed in his father's mantle." Indeed, Stephen and Theobald were sons of Henry the Elder's sister, and thus Henry, being the son of his daughter, had a stronger claim to the inheritance. Upon the death of King Stephen, Henry, Duke of Normandy and Aquitaine, became King of England, thanks especially to the support of Reynard, Count of Cornwall, and Robert, Earl of Gloucester, son of Henry's grandfather, but born of illegitimate birth. King Stephen died at Westminster after an 18-year reign and was buried in the monastery at Faversham, located 7 leagues from Canterbury. Henry, upon becoming king, returned to Limoges, where he received 30 souls from the townspeople and 7 souls and 7 mules from Abbot Pierre. He granted the lands of Aymar, Viscount of Limoges, to Geoffrey of Neuburg, brother of Rothero, Count of Perche, and to Guillaume, nicknamed Pandolf. Peace reigned there for nearly 3 years. During this time, Archibald and Bernard held the viscountcy and rendered formal homage to Abbot Pierre in a chapter of the Church of Saint-Martial. The king later restored Aymar the Younger to his paternal heritage and married him to Sarah, one of the 3 daughters of Reynald, Count of Cornwall. Henry, King of England, then led a great army to besiege Toulouse in 1159. He was accompanied by Malcolm, King of Scotland, and many nobles and prelates. Near Perigueux, on a meadow belonging to the bishop, Henry knighted the King of Scotland, who remained in his company after receiving the same honour as the sons of 30 warriors. Around the time of the Feast of Saint Michel, the 30th of June, Bishop Gerald, yielded to our prayers, conducted the procession with us. After blessing the people, he left with some knights to join the king. Soon after, he began to suffer from an eye disease and became completely blind about 3 years later. King Louis came to the aid of Raymond, Count of Toulouse, whose sister, Constance, he had married. Out of respect for the King of France, the King of England refrained from attacking Toulouse directly. He dismissed his army and passed through Uzerche, followed by the King of Scotland, and arrived in Limoges for the feast of Saint Michel, the Archangel. That Christmas, the cold was extraordinarily severe. At that time, the Empress Matilda, who had become a nun at Fontainebleau, died in 1167. She bequeathed 60,000 souls to the monastery of Gramont, and her son, King Henry II, gave an equal amount in her memory. Around this time, Guillaume Taillefer, Count of Angevin, Audebert, Count of La Marche, Robert of Cellet, and several other lords took up arms against the King of England. On the first Sunday of Advent, the king's envoys returned to La Sereine and restored the castle of Brilliance and all the lands to Bernard and Fulquoise, Viscounts of Bruce. I was at La Sereine that day and learned the news later at Clermont near Exedur. Easter was celebrated on the last day of March. King Louis of France ended a war that had lasted 2 years. The exiles returned to their homes. However, Robert of Cellet, having been captured in battle, was treated with great cruelty by King Henry, who confined him to a dungeon with only bread and water until he died. There is no need to recount here the martyrdom of Thomas, Archbishop of Canterbury, whose holy life ended around this time. Others have told that story in full. At this time, the construction of the monastery of Saint Augustine began. Queen Eleanor and her son Richard were in Limoges and laid the foundation stone. Around the same period, the old King Henry, following the wishes of his wife, granted the Duchy of Aquitaine to his son Richard. On the following Sunday, the new Duke was, according to custom, seated in the abbot's chair in the church of Saint Hilaire of Poitiers. There, Bernard, Archbishop of Bordeaux, and John, Bishop of Poitiers, presented him with a lance and a banner. During the procession, the response, O Princeps Églaire, was sung. This chant, it is said, belonged originally to Saint Martial, but no matter, all the saints of Aquitaine honourably receive what they have after the Lord through the same apostle. Richard thus had every right to take pride in it. Later, Richard came to Limoges and was received into the city with a solemn procession. He was given the banner of Saint Valery, and the new Duke was proclaimed by all in 1172. The following year, 1173, Raymond, Count of Toulouse, came to Limoges. In the presence of the King and Queen of England, their son Richard, and many nobles, he paid homage for the city of Toulouse and received it back as a fief. Raymond then revealed to the king the conspiracy his sons and wife had formed against him. Following Raymond's advice, the king left the city with only a few lords under the pretext of going hunting and quickly moved to secure the towns and castles. Raymond left the Limousin, and the King of England travelled through Uzerche and Saint-Ouen, where he visited the recently deposited relics. I will speak more on these in another book. The act of homage took place on the 6th of February. That same year, in the king's presence, William, Abbot of Reading, rendered homage for his abbey to the Archbishop of Bordeaux. On Wednesday, according to others Friday, the nobles who had been gathered for 7 days left Limoges. The war between the father, Henry II, and his son, Henry the Young King, which had lasted 2 years, so depleted the king's finances that he was forced to pawn the crown's treasure to pay the Brabançon mercenaries in his service. Eventually, while speaking with a bishop from Normandy, who often gave him penances, the king was told, "If you made a pilgrimage to St. Thomas of Canterbury, the Lord would grant you peace." "I will gladly go," replied the king, "if you come with me." "I shall come with joy," said the bishop. After crossing the sea, the king went to the tomb of St. Thomas. As he prayed during the vigil, he was filled with joy by a miracle that occurred in the presence of the martyred archbishop. After the Mass, as he was leaving the church, messengers arrived and said, "King of the English, rejoice, heaven grants you victory. Your son, the bastard, has captured your enemy, the King of Scotland, along with many thousands of his soldiers." Overjoyed, the king declared to those around him, "Know that peace has been restored to me through the merits of St. Thomas the Archbishop, whose help I earnestly sought." He immediately crossed back over the sea and went to Rouen. When the people heard of his arrival, they rang all the church bells and sounded trumpets from every tower. When King Louis and Count Philip of Flanders, who were besieging Rouen with Henry the young king, learned the reason for such rejoicing, they were struck with fear, especially when they saw the king riding out to hunt as if nothing had happened. King Louis lifted the siege and returned to France, as his army was running out of provisions. The Count of Flanders remained a little longer, acting on the advice of Pierre of Arras, his lieutenant, who urged him to hold out until the citizens, starved by the siege, offered him a ransom. Not long after, the king's sons and Queen Eleanor humbly submitted to him. However, fearing another conspiracy, King Henry imprisoned his wife, the Queen, for several years in Salisbury Tower. Count Audebert sold his viscountcy, La Marche, to King Henry of England in the presence of Guillaume of A. King Henry gave him 5,000 marks of silver for it. Audebert then departed for Jerusalem. However, Geoffrey of Lusignan and his brothers opposed the sale, claiming to be the rightful heirs, a claim that was eventually recognised. On the 20th of July, 13 days before the calends of August, which was the 24th day of the lunar cycle, Bishop Sibrand entered the city of Limoges for the first time. For some time he refrained from taking up residence in the city, as King Henry II the Elder had not yet been fully persuaded by the bishop's supporters to set aside his grudge against him. In the year of the Lord, 1183, Henry, the young king, son of King Henry II of England, died at Martel in Quercy. He had rebelled against his father once more, with the support of his brother Geoffrey, Duke of Brittany, and the King of France. But during the campaign in Limousin, while laying siege to a fortress, he fell ill and died, repenting before his death and confessing his rebellion. His death brought deep sorrow to many, and even more so to his father, who, despite their quarrels, deeply mourned him. His body was taken with great solemnity to Rouen and buried there with honour. Following the death of Henry the young king, tensions remained among his brothers. Geoffrey of Brittany continued his ambitions and disputes with Richard, Duke of Aquitaine. The King of France, ever eager to divide the power of the Plantagenets, encouraged discord between them. Meanwhile, Richard grew in reputation and strength. The people of Aquitaine, although weary of conflict, remained loyal to him due to his bravery and protection of their lands. Still, many castles and towns across the Limousin and Poitou shifted loyalties between the king, his sons, and the French crown, depending on who held local power. During the same period, the church in the Limousin experienced much turmoil. Many bishops were caught between loyalty to the English crown and the French. Bishop Sibrand of Limoges struggled to maintain neutrality, though he was often accused of favouring the English. He continued to preside over masses and confirmations across the diocese, but avoided direct political involvement. In the year 1186, Geoffrey, Duke of Brittany, and third son of King Henry II, died in Paris. He had gone to the court of King Philip of France, seeking to increase his influence. Some claimed he died in a tournament. Others whispered of foul play, though nothing was proven. His death was a blow to the balance of power in the Angevin Empire. Geoffrey left behind a pregnant wife, Constance, Duchess of Brittany, who later gave birth to a son, Arthur. The child would later become a symbol of resistance against the English crown in Brittany. The King of France, always eager to weaken English power, offered his protection to young Arthur. After Geoffrey's death, Richard remained the only viable heir in his father's eyes, though trust between them was scarce. The old King Henry grew more weary and suspicious, especially of Richard's alliance with the French king. Their relationship was one of public formality and private tension. Meanwhile, the Limousin remained a place of military importance, with key fortresses like Chalon and Aix-sur-Vienne constantly contested. By 1189, Henry was ill and exhausted from war and betrayal. When Richard, allied openly with King Philip, rose in rebellion once more, the old king had little strength left to fight. 1189, Henry II died at Chinon. Deserted by nearly everyone except his illegitimate son Geoffrey, called Geoffrey the Bastard, he passed away heartbroken. Just days before his death, he had seen a list of those who had sworn loyalty to Richard, and was crushed to see that even his beloved son John was among them. He was buried in the Abbey of Fontevraud beside his wife Eleanor's chosen resting place, though she was still living, imprisoned. Richard was proclaimed King of England, Duke of Normandy and Aquitaine, and Count of Anjou. Despite the many revolts, his arrival in Limoges was met with public celebration, and he was confirmed in his titles by lords across the south. Richard I, later called the Lionheart, was crowned in Westminster Abbey in September of 1189. His first act was to release his mother, Eleanor of Aquitaine, from her years-long imprisonment. She returned to Poitiers and Limoges, where she was hailed as a symbol of strength and justice. Monasteries sang Te Deum, towns lit candles in every chapel. Peace seemed possible at last, though it would not last long. And so ends our journey through the Chronicle of Geoffrey of Vigeois, where the life of Henry II unfolds, not just as a story of kings and battles, but as a human tale of ambition, loyalty, betrayal and sorrow. Through Geoffrey's eyes, we see a ruler whose brilliance was matched only by the turbulence he inspired, facing rebellion from sons, conflicts with kings, and the ever-present tension between secular power and spiritual authority. Henry's reign reminds us that history is never a simple narrative of good and evil. It is a tapestry of triumphs and tragedies, of human flaws and divine ideals. And even as he passed from this world, leaving a legacy of both fear and respect, his story continued through his heirs, his enemies, and the lands he ruled, forever echoing in the stones of Limousin, the abbeys of Fontevraud, and the chronicles of those who bore witness. Geoffrey of Vigeois offers us more than a mere record of events. He provides a lens into a world where every crown bore the weight of ambition, every alliance was fragile, and every act of loyalty could mask a hidden betrayal. Through his words, we sense the tension between earthly power and divine judgment, the constant struggle of a king who sought to command armies, manage family quarrels, and navigate the relentless ambitions of rivals, both foreign and domestic. We witness a ruler celebrated for his brilliance, yet shadowed by the consequences of his own decisions, a man whose victories were often inseparable from bloodshed and sorrow. In Geoffrey's Chronicle, history is alive. The stones of Limousin, the abbeys of Fontevraud, and the castles scattered across Aquitaine and Normandy all seem to echo with the triumphs, the grief, and the moral reckonings of Henry's reign. It is a world where justice, piety, vengeance, and loyalty collide, and where the legacy of a king is shaped as much by the eyes of those who watch him as by his own deeds. In the end, we are left with a portrait not of a perfect monarch, but of a human being, flawed, formidable, and unforgettable, whose life reminds us that history is never simple and the past is never silent. Thank you for joining me, Terence, here at Medieval Chronicles, on this journey through the tumultuous life of Henry II, as seen through the eyes of Geoffrey of Vigeois. History is not just a series of dates and battles, it is a story of people, choices, and the forces that shape their world. By listening to the voices of those who lived it, like Geoffrey, we gain a deeper understanding of the triumphs, betrayals, and human struggles that echo across centuries. Every chronicle, every account, every witness offers a window into the hearts and minds of those who came before us. In these stories, history becomes not just something we study, but something we feel, and something that continues to shape the world we live in today. Thank you for joining me here at Medieval Chronicles in exploring the remarkable passages of medieval history. I'd love to hear what you think. Was Henry a great king? Was he a hero, villain, victim, or something in between? Share your thoughts in the comments below and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, may your cup be full and your curiosity keener still, as we here at Medieval Chronicles continue uncovering the voices of the past through the pages of contemporary medieval documents. So thank you for joining me, Terence, here at Medieval Chronicles, and hopefully we'll see you again sometime soon. Best wishes from Essex. Goodbye.